Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're just going to be doing an oil change on this 1996 4.0 V6 Ranger. Now this should fall in line with any 4.0 V6 second gen Ranger, so let's get into it now. Alright guys, so here we are. Hood is popped, of course. So a few things you're going to need here, of course, to do an oil change would be an oil drain pan. I also have an aluminum pan here, which I use to protect the ground, so if any splatter or anything happens, it'll hit this, not my driveway or, you know, garage floor, wherever you're working. So of course you're going to need the oil filter, the oil funnel, and of course oil filter wrench and a socket wrench or wrench to remove the oil drain plug. So that's pretty much all the essentials you're going to need to do this. Nothing crazy, so let's go ahead and get started. So first thing, of course, the hood is popped. I'm going to go ahead and take off the oil filler cap. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to put this to the side for now, and now we're going to go ahead and climb under the truck and crack the drain piece. All right guys, so I'm going to go ahead and climb under the car. I also have a rug here. This is just an old rug I use to lay on the ground, so it's kind of like my bootleg version of a creeper. It just doesn't creep, but that's what I usually lay on anytime I'm under a vehicle. So got my pans here. We're gonna go ahead and slide them toward the passenger side. All right, so the oil filter is on the passenger side and the drain plug is about relatively in the same range right here at the center. So it's easier if you just put it to the passenger side. That way everything's over here. Any splatter that comes down, it'll hit your pan and not the ground or the garage floor or wherever you're working at. All right, so we got that slid under the vehicle. So let's go ahead and get this drain plug cracked. All right guys, so if you're climbing under your Ranger from the front on the 4.0, here is our oil filter, as you can see right there, and there is the oil drain plug. All right, so they're virtually in the same area, really right next to each other. So there is the filter, there is our plug. What we're going to do is go ahead and crack that drain plug loose and drain out the old oil. So that oil drain plug hex head is a 13 millimeter. Okay, so I'm going to take a 3/8 drive socket wrench with a regular 13 millimeter on it. We're going to crack that loose, and then we're going to start draining the oil into our pan. All right, so I've actually relocated myself behind the passenger wheel and splash guard here. So I'm on the passenger side. I think it's a little bit easier to get to this stuff from the passenger side versus climbing under the front, because this isn't jacked up, and you shouldn't need to jack it up to do this. But you obviously can if you want, but you know, you could come in through the front like I just showed you, coming from the side. Whatever works for you is perfectly fine. I'm just approaching this from the passenger side. I think it's a little bit easy to get in here and get access. So there is our drain plug. We're gonna go ahead and crack that loose with a 13 mil and start letting our oil drain right into our pan. So, all right guys, I got my 13 mil here on my 3/8 drive. All right, shouldn't be anything crazy. Hitting the camera, I apologize for that, but all right, I got that broken loose. Really shouldn't be tight at all. And then let's go ahead and unscrew it by hand here. My goal is to try to pull this plug with the least amount of mess possible. It's not always easy, but there we go guys. Not bad. A few drips outside of the pan, but it'll do. Alright, so there we go guys. We're gonna go ahead and let that drain out. Probably take about, you know, maybe 3-5 minutes at the most to get everything out, but we're gonna go ahead and let that drain out, and then we'll go ahead and get to the next step. All right guys, you can see about all of our oil is drained out. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put the drain plug back in. Here is our drain plug. This is a relatively new drain plug for me. As you can see, it has a crush gasket washer on here. If this is smashed, compromised, or doesn't look good like this one, you should replace it. They're about probably like $1. You can get them from, you know, Rock Auto, any parts store, AutoZone Advance. They're usually about $1, maybe $2. You can even buy a new drain plug if your drain plug's all old and, you know, cut up. And by the time of this video is being made, it's 2022. It's a good chance if you have the original drain plug from your 93 to 97 Ranger, it's a good chance it's probably compromised by now, especially the gasket. So a lot of times manufacturers recommend replacing these on every oil change. If it's in good condition, you don't need to do that, but do check it. If it needs to be replaced, you can replace just the gasket, the crush washer itself, or the whole drain plug, which will come with a new gasket. So ours is new, ours is fine, this is good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and finger thread this right back into our hole here in the oil pan. So we're gonna get that back in. And once we get this finger tight here, we're gonna go ahead and then just torque this to spec. So this is just about in here. There we go. Finger tight. All right, I'm just gonna take a paper towel, wipe around that for the moment, and then we're gonna torque this to spec. All right guys, as you can see, I have my torque wrench here. I did upgrade to a deep 13 socket and a extension simply because my torque wrench is long and bulky and it was a little bit easier to get in here with an extension and a deep 13. But if you got a small torque wrench, you could probably sneak in there with the regular 13 mil, just as we did to get the drain pan bolt off. So the torque spec for this 13 millimeter drain pan bolt is 22 to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm just going to go right in the middle at 25. So got this locked in, 25 foot-pounds. Shouldn't be too far past finger tight. Probably going to be, 3 to 4 turns. There we go. That is now locked in to 25 foot-pounds. All right, now you can probably get away with just snugging it. You just want to make sure that washer isn't crushed, but that is the torque spec, 22 to 30 foot-pounds. So we went right in the middle at 25. That is now torqued to 25 foot-pounds. And what I'm going to do real quick is clean off the drain pan bolt with some brake cleaner. So brake cleaner is a great way to clean up oil. So we're just going to hit a little bit right there. I'm also going to take a paper towel. So I have a paper towel here. I'm just going to wipe around this. And you want to make sure you get all the old oil off, because we want to recheck this when we're done and refill it up with oil and start it. And we want to make sure we have no leaks at any of the points, whether it be the oil filter or this oil drain plug. And you can't check if it's leaking if you got a bunch of old oil on there. So take some brake cleaner to spray around the area, wipe it down. And there we go, guys. That is clean, ready to go. So oil filter drain plug torqued to 25 foot-pounds, cleaned up, nice, ready to go. And now we can go ahead and get the oil filter off. All right, guys, we are on to our oil filter right here. So we're gonna go ahead and get this off. Now, technically, this should not be on here tight. It should have been put on hand tight, but unfortunately, a lot of oil change places, whoever the shop that has the 17-year-old kid putting on the oil filter on, they tend to think it's a strongman competition and put them on extremely tight, way tighter than it was ever intended. You look at any factory service manual, they're going to tell you to put it on by hand, maybe give it a 3/4 turn. So oil filters should be put on by hand, and they should be technically removable by hand. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. So if it is on there, you could do something like this. This is a universal oil filter wrench that you could get from AutoZone, Walmart. This is actually from Walmart. It's a 3-jaw, and what it will do is once you start to pull on it, or remove it, I should say, it'll grip on and it'll lock into the oil filter and help spin it off. So that is the option. The technical oil filter wrench for this should be a 93 millimeter 36 flute. So if you wanted to grab a 36 flute 93 millimeter oil filter wrench, you could utilize that. But you could use the correct oil filter wrench like that. You could use something like this. You could use a strap oil filter wrench. You could use something like this, which is 2 jaws. Basically, it's like a jaw that'll clamp on, and you can turn it. Really, whatever works for you, whatever tool you have readily available. There's a couple options that you can use in order to get it off. Aside from the 93 mil 36 flute oil filter wrench, I think this might be the best option. Anytime I have one that somebody decided to crank home for no reason, I usually am able to get it off with this. But whatever works for you. I put this on because I'm the person who does the oil changes on this, and it should be technically removable by hand. So let's see here. Sometimes I even have a little trouble getting it off, even by tightening it with my own hand. Yeah, see, this is It's not coming. All right, so I'll give you an example of how this tool works, since mine's not going to come off by hand. It should, and I did put it on by hand. I'm the person who does the oil changes on this, and I did put it on by hand, but it seems to want to fight us. So I'll go ahead, put this on a ratchet real quick, and I'll show you how this works. All right, guys, since I can't get my own hand strength off here, I'm gonna go ahead and show you how this works. So got it locked in on a 3/8 drive here. That's what the drive is of the wrench. Once I start tightening this, it should start grabbing onto it. There we go. All right, I'm gripped on. I might hit the camera, and I apologize for that, but it's just kind of the nature of this. Yep, there we go. Just takes a little spin on it. It'll grab it, turn it. All right, so that's if you're like me and you can't get your own hand strength off, you can do that. All right, it's a good tool to have. And now I'm able to turn it with my hands here. So we're gonna see some oil run down here in a second. Just be careful. It's gonna start dripping everywhere. There we go. All right, just let that run out. Might take a minute, you know, depending on how much oil is in and around here when it was turned off. But as it's coming out, I'm just going to lightly spin this off. Yep, should be about good. And then when I take this off, it is going to come with a little bit more coming out of the filler neck, but should be good here. It's about off. Oh, yep, there we go. All right, guys, so we should be able to see our oil filter adapter right here. What I'm going to do is wipe this out. So let's take a paper towel, wipe it really good here. All right, try to get any excess oil off. I'm also going to take some brake cleaner and shoot down the side where some might have dripped. So I'm just cleaning up all the old oil here from all the draining here. So a little bit here, don't need a lot. There we go. Spraying it down, just let it run off and drip. We're going to give it a little bit of wiping with the paper towel. So really just want to make sure everything is nice and clean, and then that way we'll have a nice fresh start to our oil change. Everything will be good to go. We had no oil leaking, no drips from the oil change itself. And then we'll be in a good place to recheck and make sure we have no leaks or anything like that when we reinstall the oil filter and everything and start it up. So there we go, guys. Everything looks really dry, clean. Everything is good to go, all brake cleaned up. So let's get our new oil filter on. All right, guys, so we have our new oil filter here. I got the Motorcraft oil filter. It is an FL-1A, very common Ford Motorcraft oil filter. So this is the oil filter for the 4L. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing on here. All right, now one thing I like to do, if you didn't notice on the old one, I do like to put the date on them just for reference. You don't have to, of course, just something I like to do. Now on the inner side of the oil filter, there is that black O-ring. I'm going to take a little bit of the old oil, and we're just going to take it with our finger and go around that seal with some of that old oil. All right, this is a big recommendation from any factory service manual will tell you to do it. There's been many times I haven't and gotten away with it, but technically speaking, that is the correct process, and what you should be doing is putting a few dabs of oil on the oil seal. So, all right, so as you can see, we got our oil filter adapter all nicely cleaned up. We're going to take our oil filter here, and we're going to press it up against the threads and just start spinning it. Should grab relatively easy. All right, we're going to spin it until it's about, you know, tight as you can with your hand. And then I'm going to give it a nice hard turn with my hand. And as you can see, it's still going on by hand. This is why there's absolutely no need to use any type of wrench or tool to do this. It should be put on by hand. So this is really pretty tight, I would say, by hand. Yeah, I snuck a hair turn out of it. So there we go, guys. I snuck a little turn out of it at the end there, so you can see it's locked in. We should have no issues with it leaking, coming off. It'll be perfectly fine. Like I said, it is recommended to just do it by hand. So there we go, guys. Oil drain plug torqued, new oil filter on. We're good to go. Well, let's go ahead and fill this thing up with new oil. All right, guys, we are under the hood here. So we got the oil filter all nice and tight. We have the oil drain plug torqued to spec, everything under the truck good and ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing filled back up with oil. Now I'm going to be using Motorcraft 530 synthetic blend. You can use any 530 weight really that you prefer. I'm just going to be running this. I recently rebuilt this. This is the first oil change since I rebuilt this motor, so I'm going to be strictly running this 530 Motorcraft from here on out. But like I said, whatever oil preference you have is perfectly fine. The oil weight is 530. Here is a insert directly from the owner's manual. So there you go, 530. I like using Motorcraft, so that's why we went with the Motorcraft filter and the oil. So we're going to come right here. We already took our oil cap off, so I'm going to put this funnel in here nice and tight. Grab our oil here. Now these are 5-quart jugs, which is about a gallon, so you should be able to dump the whole thing in and you'll be just fine. So getting it going here, and we're just going to sit here and pour this up until our whole 5-quart jug is poured into the motor. All right, guys, we have all 5 quarts poured up, so we're good to go. We're refilled on oil, so let's go ahead and get our oil cap back on. All right, we got all 5 quarts poured up of our 530. We're just going to drop this in here, and we're just going to turn it until we get one click. All right, there we go. There we go. It's nice and locked in. So we got all 5 quarts poured up. This thing is fully changed, new oil filter, drain plug torqued, oil poured up. Everything is good to go. So now that we're done the oil change, I'm going to start this up, let it run for a few minutes, and we just want to check our work and make sure we have no leaks coming from the drain plug, nothing dripping down the oil filter. Just make sure everything looks good and we got no oil coming from any of our work areas. So this is good to go. We're going to fire this up, check it out, and see what it's looking like. All right, guys, our oil change is complete. Now, I would recommend doing this every 3,000 miles, okay? So at the time of this video, it is 2022. All these trucks at this rate are either, 25, 30 years old. So every 3K is really ideal. No matter what oil you're using, every 3K is the ideal interval for these trucks at this point. So we're at 245. I put a sticker in the window here, so it'll be due at 248. I also put the date just as I did on the oil filter to easily keep track of the intervals. So I got my date, my mileage all marked up. So every 3K would be my recommendation. And what we're going to do now is go ahead and start this truck up, and we're going to let it run for a few just to make sure everything's good. We have no leaks. Our oil filter's good and our drain plug is good with no leaks from all of our work. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up, and then we'll do some checking. All right, this is a manual here, so foot on the clutch. Let's get her started up. All right, it's fired right up. So let's go ahead, let this run for a few, and then we'll go ahead and get under the truck and check out what we're looking like. All right, guys, so this bad boy's been running for about 5 minutes now, maybe close to it. So let's go ahead and check out our work. If you had any leaks, they definitely would be noticeable by now. So there's our drain plug, dry as a bone, nothing dripping off our oil filter. So everything looks nice and dry. Good to go, guys. All right, guys, so our oil change is complete. Like I mentioned, make sure you're tracking your mileage and you know where you're at. Every 3K is my recommendation. So I hope this helped with changing the oil on your 4.0 second gen Ford Ranger. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.